From beautiful downtown Milwaukee, the mecca of mythicism, it's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show, keeping the all-seeing eye of Horus on the secular movement. Produced weekly by Mythicist Milwaukee and sponsored by Atheist Community of Milwaukee, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Freethinkers, and King's Tower Productions. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show highlights movers and shakers from the global secular movement and explores the mythic origins of today's major religions.
Thank you again for joining us, everyone. Today we have a motley crew here. It's Antonio and myself, Sean Frasick. We typically don't host, but we were the only ones available, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. This is what we do.
No, it's great. It's great. And today we have Matt and Tim from Atheism 101 podcast. But before we get to them, I just kind of wanted to talk about the Great Lakes Reason Fest conference that was scheduled the weekend of, it'll be the 29th. October 29th. So we ended up finding out that some speakers were invited to the conference that never actually were lined up. Hemet Mehta's been blogging about it, Seth Andrews, Arn Ra. It came out that this conference is not happening. And so if you were thinking about going to that conference, make sure you get a refund or try to get a refund. And if you hadn't bought tickets yet, do not buy tickets. It's kind of turning into one of those G2R things where the organizer really wasn't organized and the website is still up taking people's money, but the conference isn't happening. And, obviously our conference is the weekend before, so we understand how important it is for transparency in these situations. We don't want to see people lose their money like they did with G2R. So it's well documented now. Many people have come out stating that this isn't happening. So if you were planning on going to that conference, don't buy tickets. So that was my piece there. And I think it's important because, as for atheism and conference in general, like to keep people's confidence in these things moving forward. I don't want to start seeing a trend where people don't feel confident in purchasing tickets and, having these things cancel. So to the organizers out there, Hemet wrote a great blog about why it's important to be organized when you're throwing an event like this. So yeah, Matt and Tim, thank you again for joining us. Atheism 101 podcast. You guys definitely friends a long time. We just wanted to find out, how did this come about? How did you guys, Antonio and I are friends before we started this too. So it's a little bit of parallels there. So like what made you guys decide to do the podcast?
Do I have to field this question, Matt?
First of all, I guess we should say thank you for having us on. That was great. We really appreciate the invite. We're generally pretty super awkward, so it's a big risk you're taking here by having us on.
I'd like to clarify, Matt is super awkward. I am generally pretty personable.
Great, awesome.
Yeah. Now, Tim was down here to North Carolina for my wedding, and as we always tend to do, when we were together, we got really, really drunk and sat out on my patio and just debated a whole bunch of stuff. And he went home eventually. I called him up like just a couple weeks after that. And I said, hey, man, why don't we just sit down and record some of this stuff and see how it sounds? Let's try to make a podcast. I think we ended up making 6 episodes before we said, okay, let's go with this. So then we put it all out there, and we've just kind of been doing it and learning about the craft a lot, especially ever since.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, Matt and I were friends since basically orientation of college. We met in a placement test. I think it was the math or the English test. I forget which one.
I failed if it was math.
I failed both of them. So, and we were very good friends pretty much from that instant, and we were always super competitive with one another. Mm. And this has just become another instance of our competitiveness in trying to make better episodes, edit our episodes better, make the other person look dumb.
See, we used to do it with ping pong or racquetball, but nobody benefited from that. Hopefully somebody's benefiting from this.
Any beer pong competitions where I would get heated?
Oh, sure. But I would always get those.
Yeah, I was really good at beer pong.
So what was it like going through the technical aspect of creating the podcast as you guys improved the technical piece? Because we have some individuals that luckily they were interested in what we were doing, and they had this background, and they have shot our podcast quality, through the roof. So how did you guys pull this off?
I mean, we just yesterday made another couple changes, and what are we coming on 3 years?
We're over 3 years.
Over 3 years. Yes, you're right. We just had our 3-year anniversary.
Yeah. September 11th.
Yes.
Yeah, congrats and great date there.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
I'll date.
Never forget. You'll never forget.
Yeah.
Never
Right.
forget.
It's, oh man, we're not very good at that side of things, so we're just constantly tweaking. And I think we've got it now to a point where generally week to week, our shows sound pretty good, but then something will crop up and we have to figure that out. It's one of those things that I don't think either of us really enjoys doing, but, we just kind of have to learn as we go. And every once in a while, we just have really bad sounding shows.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky as it's kind of gone. Like super early, one of our early listeners reached out and was like, "Hey, show sounds like shit, but the quality's great. Here's something you might want to try." And we're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." And it was like the first time we ever like leveled a show. And then a few years later, we were having issues with the transitions between the music and the actual podcast. And someone else reached out and said, "Hey, you might want to try this." And it was like, "Oh, great." And then we became friends with another podcast, Waiting for Wrath. And Steve and Aaron from that podcast are tech guru people. And they pretty much just took over all of that and basically answer all our questions and fix everything for us because we're dumb troglodytes.
So you guys have cracked the top 100 podcasts, and that's how
on
we
iTunes,
found you.
yeah.
On iTunes.
So congrats on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So what would you say is the topic that brings your guests or your fan base to you? Is it your personalities? Can you guys be honest about that and kind of be proud of yourselves for your personality? Or is it the guests or the topics that you believe is really making this possible for you?
I can tell you.
I'm going to stop Matt before he answers.
Okay.
And I'm going to say what the actual reason is that everybody loves Matt. Matt is the lovable bear of our podcast. I'm the jackass, and we try to teach people and we play off each other. And I think that's what people like.
Yeah, I think people generally, we try to be funny. We do try, but that's not necessarily our goal. Our goal is to just research as much as humanly possible between the shows and present you with as much information as we possibly can. And surprisingly, that doesn't appeal to everybody, even especially in our sort of movement. I think that's generally to me, it seems like the main appeal. I can tell you what people don't like, and that's when we take a month to argue about mythicism, for example. Yeah, they didn't like that.
Yeah. No, we totally understand that.
Our listenership went down the turlet after that month.
Wow.
And it was just the arguing, I think. It was just the constant bickering back and forth, I think, that killed it. People seem to enjoy the topic.
And one of the things that I noticed right away is the amount of research you guys do. Just the fact on your website you have Jesus riding two donkeys. That's you have to be on the inside to kind of know that, and you have to really, really study know the arguments against the Gospels, and so that definitely comes across. I appreciate it. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but that was one of the things I noticed right away. So take us through what was the argument on mythicism, so we can lose some listeners here.
Oh God, that was such a crazy month. I don't even remember half of it, honestly, because most of my time I was like, every free second, I'm like, oh, what's this one little nitpicky thing he said? Let me find that. And, and I think it just evolved into an argument rather than as a debate as it was set out to be, and again, that's what people didn't like about it. So,
well, one of the reasons I think it kind of went a little bit sideways is Matt and I agree on so much of the mythical aspect of Jesus that we really had to take it to such a nuanced level, which essentially came down to Paul and the writings of Paul, that we really essentially spent an entire month going through Paul's epistles piece by piece and talking about, interpolations, whether or not it was authentic. It became like the minutia, like it was just like that tiny little bits of stuff that you really need to be invested and super curious about this stuff to ever want to know. And I think it got so granular that people kind of lost us.
Yeah, it tuned out.
Whereas if I was arguing with someone who completely believes that Jesus was a real person. That might be a more interesting argument. But Matt's basic position was that the historical Jesus that Christians teach was not a real.
Yeah, the biblical Jesus is.
Yeah, it was not that person. There may have been a character that the stories were basically based upon. And I obviously take it a step further and think that that's not necessarily the case. And it's a, it's a standard case of, well, not standard. It's a case of euhemerization basically gone backwards.
Yeah.
And essentially, yeah, it got too specific.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Probably.
For anyone to get anything out of it except for someone who maybe has a podcast with the name Mythicist. Do you guys know anybody like that?
Right, exactly.
Well,
And
I would say personally, I definitely side with you, Tim, but in terms of
Hashtag Matt blows jobs.
But I will say that for the sake of making an argument, because I wasn't living there at that time, and impossibilities, are not past, the realm of existence. So I do use Matt's argument to say, if there was a person out there speaking his mind and some crazy guy out there, that is possible, but it is not what is described in the Bible.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree on the mythical Jesus definitely did not exist. And, that's why we're excited with this Bart Ehrman, Robert Price debate. You guys spend time arguing about it. We argue about it internally. We have guests that come on that like to debate it. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see, if we can move some people either way with this debate. You have some staunch mythicists or some staunch historicists, and it'll be interesting to see if we can kind of move that needle.
What I came away with, and I hope, I mean, those guys are monsters. They're huge. Tim and I are just two dummies who could afford microphones and enough time to read. But what I came away with at the end of our conversation was just wanting better arguments. So I'm really curious to see how this goes. I'm looking forward to tuning into it because they have to have the best thing going. I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. If you're going to pick two people, it'd be those two. Yeah. Trust me, it was not very cheap to do. And and we really appreciate you guys helping promote it because, we want to make that money back. But
sure.
Remember to get your tickets for Myth Information Conference 3 featuring the big debate between Robert Price and Bart Ehrman coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in downtown Milwaukee. Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank the sponsors of Myth Information Conference 3, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, Edwin Herbert, author of Mythos Christos, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Freethinkers, Atheist Community of Milwaukee, and Polaris Financial. Get your tickets now at mythicistmilwaukee.com.
Tell us a little bit about, where you guys from, and, atheism as being the topic of the podcast is interesting. Why did you guys end up focusing on that?
It's actually a show about baking. We just figured atheism was a hot topic, so we called it that.
The buzzword.
Yeah, pulling the fans. Instant fan base.
Yeah.
Instant 5,000 people.
Right. Well, I will say that the University of Minnesota recently wrote an article stating that atheists were the most hated minority in America. So it's interesting. Myself and Sean as Latinos and atheists, it's like, wow, we are definitely very hated in this country by some sects.
Right. It's just us two.
The only ones.
Well, I'm happy to know you.
Yeah. So why'd you guys decide to go with atheism?
I think it was the most interesting thing. We figured it was something we would never, ever run out of things to talk about with it. I mean, it could have just as easily been a history show.
Right.
So many of our shows are history shows. It was just, history is interesting, but it's not really out there changing lives. I think that was an important part of it too. We wanted to provide a useful service. So at least for me, that was my motivation with wanting to go that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think Matt and I, one of the funny things that we've talked about before on our show is Matt and I knew each other for
a couple of years.
Way too long.
8 or 9 years before we ever actually talked about our lack of belief. I mean, I think we both came to it completely independently of one another and went through the transition from believer to non-believer, essentially when we were almost living together.
Well, no, mine was in high school.
Instances. Yeah. Oh, all right. So yours was a little before, mine was a little bit after.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you were a new atheist when I first became friends with you. I was leaving religion when we were still friends, and it's something that we never really talked about, because there was girls and booze.
Right. Beer pong.
Yeah. So when it finally came time, after Matt's wedding, and we started talking about the issues that were kind of bothering us. I mean, we're both super curious people. We both obsessively research things.
Anyway,
I never met someone who read more books than I did until I met Matt. So it was just kind of a natural evolution from that. And our curiosity, A, about history, B, about religion and the weirdness of it and the issues that we had with it. And it just kind of, it kind of came from that. And I think the podcast itself kind of really bears that out, because the majority of it has to do with either a history of a religion, a history of the people who founded the religion, or something kind of based around that. Like we like,
or science compared to what religion says. There's a lot of that too,
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think the big message of our show is going back and looking at the roots of where a lot of these beliefs and ideas come from, and trying
how similar they all are.
Right.
Yeah,
crazy.
And trying to expose how ridiculously close all of these stories are.
And it's just so weird, because you guys are like literally telling our story. Antonio and I, we've been friends since 2001 in the beginning. We're very competitive. We're always trying to prove each other wrong. Our big thing actually was Mario Kart. We spent
my God,
hours and hours a night.
We used to play like
I used to have
200
dreams
games.
with bananas. Yeah,
The best of 200 games.
And between the four of us, I'm the best.
No, that's so funny. We actually came up with a point system for because it was first, second, third, fourth. So that's not good enough. So we had to come up with a point system to figure out who the victor was for the night. And it would always be another 16. Let's run another 16. But
with minimal weapons, you can't.
Exactly. You got to eliminate.
No blue shells.
We just lost all of our listeners right now. But yeah, no blue shells, no stars. Yeah, get rid of that crap.
So anyways.
Yeah, anyways. Yeah, then we became good friends, and it was 3-4 years ago now where we started getting into the same thing. It's kind of a bad word these days, but we actually saw Zeitgeist together, and it was the same thing where it's like, granted, this documentary has its issues, but there's a lot of information in here that we didn't know. We know a lot of people don't know where these religions come from, how they have their start in antiquity, how they just essentially tell the same story over and over. And we're happy because we're going to do the Batman and Jesus movie, where it's essentially retelling that story, but we're going to try to get more people interested with that Batman figure. But it's not any different than Batman or Superman. I mean, these stories all change. They have, the Gospels of Batman, if you go back to the 70s versus where we're at today. And it's exactly right. That's our goal too.
The Gospel of Nolan's.
Yeah, the Gospel of Nolan.
Matt and I had a very similar exchange where I watched Zeitgeist first, and I was actually texting Matt while I was watching it, and I'm like, "You need to watch this movie. This is pretty interesting. Like it's a lot of stuff I know, but still some things that are like really interesting that I never really thought about." And I'm texting him this, texting him that, and then all of a sudden I was like, this thing took a weird turn.
Right. Yeah. When you get to part 2 and 3, right, it's like, what happened?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly, and we've addressed Peter Joseph, the guy who made the film. He actually shared one of our events when we did a tribute to D.M. Murdoch, whose work was used for, a majority of the part of the first part. But that's our criticism of him, is the fact that first part essentially made it, to have millions and millions of views, and he kind of walked away from it and he's like, I'm just going to let this go. And
it was a real bait and switch there.
Yeah, totally. So so we still have, and that's part of the struggle with mentioning Zeitgeist, is people think about part 2 and 3 and they're like, what the?
Did you also, in addition to your interest with history, want to contribute to a world free from religious oppression or religious bigotry, which is why you also wanted to delve into this topic? Because there's so much with women's rights and children's rights, that you can talk about and try to battle against when you are discussing religious beliefs.
I think for me, having the best information you can have obviously leads to better decisions.
Yeah.
So that's the way I think I mostly address the evils of the world, besides just getting pissed at them, saying, look, this is what they're using to prop up this shitty stuff that they do. It doesn't pan out. So let's stop doing that terrible stuff. I think that we probably stay away from social issues more than a lot of the shows I listen to, I think, anyway. It's just not really our bailiwick. Our hope is that
bailiwick.
Yes, our hope is that we are making a difference.
Bastard.
We hope that we're making a change in those things, at least in the small audience we have. How do you feel, Tim?
I think to say that I was interested in changing worldviews when we started doing this. Would be ridiculous to say. I really think that, when I first got into podcasts, the first podcast I listened to was Reasonable Doubts. And that was seriously a podcast that really helped shape my views and just completely give me that amazing kick in the ass of like, man, I've been looking at shit totally the wrong way. Just about like everything. So I think when Matt and I sat down here, and it was at this table 3 years ago, with my daughter's pink iPad and my Apple and my Apple headset to, record a podcast, which we had to do in 3 parts because we could only afford this like shit recorder thing.
Yeah.
I think I was at best just trying to repay what I got out of those early Reasonable Doubt shows.
Well, that's fantastic. And have you guys had any experience in, obviously you guys probably talk about, the atheist figures, but have you ever been to any conferences? Do you have anybody in atheism that you like to talk with or meet?
Yeah, well, ReasonCon is only like 40 minutes from my house here. So I've been twice. Tim, you went once. Right? Yeah. And we're planning on making it again for this next one. And then in the next month, we'll both be living back up in the north. So I'm hoping that we can do some more traveling because it'll be a little easier with the two of us so close together.
We like the idea of going to conferences and stuff. Unfortunately, Matt and I both generally work over 65 to 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
Got the families and all that stuff. So as much as I enjoy going to conferences, it's always a little bit harder. After working 70 hours, you tell your wife that you need to leave, and you get kind of that stink eye kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah, taking the 8 hours or whatever the show takes a week is enough.
Oh, I know it. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much.
At least now we have patrons to pay for our travel, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
We went to the ReasonCon, it was 2 years ago, I guess. And I just had an absolute blast, and got to meet one of my.
No.
Go ahead. What was that?
Oh, Tim. I don't think Tim has amazing confidence. I would kill for his confidence. He can be so dead wrong about something, but just believe it so hard because he's Tim that he must be right. This guy has unshakable confidence. He was scared to the point of peeing his pants of going and meeting David Fitzgerald.
Really?
Oh, he was so nervous. He was like, "Oh!" I ended up having to go over and go, "Come on, Tim, come meet him."
Really, we just chill with the guy like it's nothing.
Yeah. Well, but that's how it is. I remember I went to the first PastaCon, not the first one, but the first one I went to. It was like 2013. But yeah, it is. It's like, what do you say to these guys or girls, and like, what is the topic? And yeah, it could be stressful.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so let me rephrase that, Tim. The first time, yes, it was the same way, but now you realize he's such a friendly and personable guy. It's like you can't help but just relax immediately in front of these people.
Yeah, we ended up talking with him for half an hour.
We talked and it was great, but it's one of those things. Like when we first had Justin from Reasonable Doubts on, Matt and I were both shitting our pants.
Yeah.
It's like, this is Justin from Reasonable Doubts. Like this is as big as it gets. And then we actually sat down with him. We had a great conversation. We conversed for a while. We kind of continued to talk to him after. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
But Nailed, for me, the book was one of the first times I really kind of started going towards that mythicist view. And that cemented a lot of my ideas and formed a lot of the basis where I did my jump off research into why I kind of hold that view.
Right.
So to meet him was scary.
Right.
Yeah, sure. To be like me, I know he's dead now, but meeting Kurt Vonnegut,
yeah,
his books, totally changed my life. changed the way I looked at a lot of things. And I get it. I just like picking on you because
Well, if you do end up watching our movie Batman and Jesus,
Yes.
he acts in our movie as well.
Oh, he doesn't act,
Oh,
but
nice.
he provides some of the scholarship.
Oh, not only that, he acts in our movie. He plays a bit.
No, that wasn't holy shit.
Oh, that
Yeah.
wasn't our.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's a holy shit video out there where David Fitzgerald does exercise some acting skills that he has.
that's
Check it.
Sweet.
Top 10 killers in the Bible.
I can
Okay, yeah.
attest to his
Yeah.
dancing skills.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
attest to
oh
his
yeah,
acting
that's
skills.
right.
Yeah.
I've seen him do that too. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was cutting a rug that
Well,
night.
imagine him on stage with Killer Priest from the Wu-Tang Clan playing the what was he playing? What was he?
Oh, he's playing the tambourine.
The tambourine. Yeah, that happened in Milwaukee, so that's pretty fun.
Nice.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Mandisa Thomas was the third.
Yeah, she was singing. She's got a great
she was
voice.
singing.
Yeah, it was great.
Killer Priest was rapping.
Yeah, right.
Remember to get your
Drills
tickets
playing
for
the
Myth
tambourine.
What do you
Information
guys see
Conference
coming
3
up here? I
featuring
know,
the big
how
debate
many
between Robert
you've
Price
been doing
and
it for
Bart
3
Ehrman.
years? I'm assuming
Coming up
you guys
on
have what,
October
like
21st at Historic
50
Turner Hall
or
in
so
downtown
shows,
Milwaukee.
something like that.
Wow,
Mythicist
we've
Milwaukee
done
would
so
like to
many
thank the
half
sponsors
midweek
of Myth
shows,
Information
and
Conference 3.
we have a
we just-
Patreon
Freedom from Religion
only
Foundation,
show that we do
the
every
Sophia
week
Wolf
that we're
Quadracci
coming up on
Memorial
100
Fund
shows
for
for
stem
that
cell
too.
research.
Wow.
So,
Edwin
Just hit
Herbert, author of Mythos
160 of
Christos,
real episodes,
Atheist
and we're
Alliance
at
of America,
190
Atheist
something.
Republic, Godless
of,
Engineer,
like
Kenosha
total
Racine,
pieces,
Atheists and Free
because we
Thinkers,
did like a lot of
Atheist
half
Community of
episodes and
Milwaukee,
things like that.
and Polaris
Yeah, when you get to
Financial.
that point, that's one of the things we're learning. It's like we're right around that range too, and there's always something else. There's always someone else to get. There's always something else to tackle. Like what do you guys got coming up? Anything you're really looking forward to? Maybe someone you're excited to get on?
well, you guys are coming on here shortly. So we're excited about that.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's why everyone
Next
loves Matt.
I think I don't know. Let me see how you feel about this, Tim. I think at this point in the show, it's a little weird because you think, we might be just kind of in the routine and doing it, but I think that we ran out of the pre-research, the stuff that we already knew, like a year ago. So all these shows that we're doing now are a lot of them, like the one that comes out this week was completely new. I had no idea about it until I just kind of stumbled upon it and started researching it. So these shows are just so much fun because I'm excited because it's new information to me and I get to tell people about it. So I'm going to talk this next week about Vlad the Rus, and it's just such a fun story. As far as guests, we don't really have guests all that often.
Right.
I don't know that we have. Do we have anyone else coming up, Tim?
I don't think so. No,
Yeah.
I don't think it's kind of one of those things where we want to have guests, but at the same time, the people I think who listen to our show are not necessarily expecting to have a guest. They're more expecting to
have a topic.
have a topic.
Yeah.
So we try not to really have guests too often, except for the weeks where we don't have time to research, and then we're like, "Hey, let's get a guest."
Yeah.
Or
So,
or if we have friends who might be guests who will do the research for us.
Yeah.
That's also really good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
What we usually tend to do with a guest is just prepping you guys too, I guess. We'll play Bible Jeopardy, which ruins everybody's spirits because it's just such a damn hard game. And then what we usually end up doing is, like, if they have a book to talk about, Karen Garst was on recently. We have a conversation about their product, or whatever. But a lot of time, what we'll do is we'll go pick something that you're passionate about that, like maybe you guys have never had a chance to talk about on the show. Come tell it on our show, like
Right.
teach our audience something that maybe we don't have access to. We try to find a way to keep it on the
Informative.
theme of the show. Then again, we've had guests on where we just come on and talk nonsense for an hour or two. So
Yeah.
So what's it like in your community? Do you guys feel that it's okay for you to state to everyone, yeah, I'm an atheist, and
Yeah, like at
and that's
work,
just the way it
and
is,
family.
I'm really, really, really dense with social things. So I've been an out atheist since pretty much the minute that I made my mind up about it when I was like 16. I just tell everybody and let them deal with the fallout.
That's great.
And I just might, maybe there's hostility and I just don't pick up on it. I don't know. But I mean, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. So it's hippy dippy central. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I don't have any hardship with it. Really.
I generally, it's not something I like broadcast to people. I work with kids. I'm a strength coach. So it's not something I really talk about with them, just because parents are weird.
Right.
And if your strength coach is talking to you about whether or not Jesus existed, it might go sideways. So it's just not something I really bring up. And I do work with like general population people as well. So it's just one of those golden rules: you don't talk about religion, politics,
and yet you do all the time.
Yeah,
adult clients.
It depends on it really depends on the person
if they bring it up,
and how long I've known them. In terms of my like actual personal life, like almost all of my friends know. One side of my family doesn't, and it's just because my grandmother is still alive, who's 97, and devout Lutheran, and it would just break her heart.
Yeah.
So it's just like one of those things where it's like, I'm not really going to deal with it. I've had a lot of fallout with my father and his current wife about it. And if you're a listener of our show, you'll be very familiar with that. But I did actually have a funny interaction this past weekend. I went back to my hometown for a friend's kid's birthday party. I saw a friend who I hadn't seen in probably 4 or 5 years. And he told me a story about how basically what had happened was 2 years ago, I went to New York to meet some friends, and randomly the podcast got brought up, and we started talking about it. And they were two of the guys are basically grilling me on why I'm an atheist and like, what does that mean? And just couldn't fathom what that meant. So I was just trying to talk to them about it, and blah, blah, blah. 2-3 hours go by. I have to leave. They're going to a party. It ends. So then this friend last week goes, oh, I saw, X and Y, and they told me about the whole exchange they had with you in New York. And like, these aren't friends that like, I'm really concerned on whether or not they ever talk to me again. But I mean, they're buddies from college, basically. He basically said they went, I don't think I can trust Tim anymore. Like, how can you trust someone who doesn't believe in God?
Oh, wow.
And this guy at the party is also, turns out, a non-believer, and was like, no, guys, like that has nothing to do with, the reliability or trustworthiness of a person and whether or not they believe in like a fake, sky daddy.
Right.
And
now I can't trust you.
Yeah. And he's basically said, like, I argued for like 3 minutes, and I'm like, you know what? I just give up. So I'm like, no, that's fine. So I apparently lost 2 friends.
Wow. Even though, we're in Milwaukee, supposedly, supposed to be liberal. Antonio and I can't really share this at work. We can't talk about it. Antonio's not even his real name. So yeah, we go to that level. It's his middle name. People can probably figure it out. But
I'm out.
Right. But that's the thing. I mean, that's, we can't put it on our Facebook wall. So, all the things we do, we're really excited about. And I'm always like itching to tell someone. And I can't, I can't go to work and be like, hey, we brought the Wu-Tang Clan to the Reason Rally, because it'll be like, what's the Reason Rally? And you're an atheist and now you're fired. So,
Also, what's a Wu-Tang?
Right. And that too. I'm assuming, that too. But yeah, just stuff like that. We just can't. I'm always like itching. So that's what's cool about the podcast and our group and the events, because then I actually have
a way to really get it out there for sure. Yeah.
Right. No. Yeah. And I guess hearing more individuals such as yourself and Matt, Tim and Matt, it gives me more confidence to say, it is okay for me to express myself that I am an atheist, and let me tell you about it. But similarly, I definitely I work with children as well. I'm in fact, maybe we'll edit this piece out, but I'm a principal. So, I definitely work with a high Hispanic population and African American population, and sectors of those communities are very devout. So then, I just try to separate, what I do here as much from my day job as possible. I'm just there to just make sure they learn content and are as successful as possible in life, and any of this stuff.
I think that's good advice, no matter what your religious proclivities are. Keep it to yourself at work.
Yeah, right.
I would never tell anybody that I think it's a good idea for them to go talk about it at work.
Right.
So I
Can I ask you? Can I ask you a quick question about that? I mean, is it hard for you as a principal, who I think, generally trying to think back on my multiple times in the principal's office throughout my childhood, like there was a lot of moralizing going on in those lectures. I mean, is that something that you kind of have to tailor for the kids, or do you speak of morality in very vague terms?
For me, it's in very vague terms in the sense of this is right and this is wrong in the context of social norms. But then it's always really good for me to just go back to what is in the staff and student handbook.
Yeah.
And I just go back to that and say, this is not allowed in school because it's written here in paper. And this is, what's
This is
on the
policy.
political aspect,
Right,
what the policy is.
Yeah.
So I always
about-
go back to that.
Nice.
How about dealing with parents? I mean, because I would assume a lot of times, like, parents might come in and say, like, you need to put the fear of God into the kid.
I just say, well, I appreciate your opinion, but I'll do my best to make sure that they follow the rules next time.
Right.
And here's the student handbook.
Right. And for me, again, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, in fact, is what's in policy. The Pledge of Allegiance is supposed to be stated. I definitely know the Pledge of Allegiance says under God, but I must do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm not going to put myself on Fox News at this time to be the principal in America who will not do.
I've been pushing him to do that, but I think FFRF would love that, but
My daughter just started kindergarten, and she came home and did the Pledge of Allegiance, and she said the under God thing, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, I thought that was taken out. I thought that was proven to be like an unconstitutional thing. Or no?
Yeah,
was I wrong?
It is
You can abstain.
unconstitutional. Exactly. That's it. It is unconstitutional to force an individual to state the Pledge of Allegiance or stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. But
Colin Kaepernick.
yeah, but the Pledge of Allegiance is still stated
That was a national
nationwide.
Same difference, basically. Yeah, but that was one of those things. Like, she came home, and I was like, wait, what? They still say that? Like, I thought they took it out, or that they didn't do it anymore.
Oh no, it's still said. It's still said, and it's still there. It's still in writing, just like it's in our money.
Yeah.
I was used to just mime that part.
I would say under what God? And then, that's
under
part
which
of
one?
Yeah, which one are we talking about here? Because there's a lot of them. But yeah, that kind of takes us back to the whole thing. And I think if more people understand that there isn't just one God, I think they can actually, even as children, they can start making sense of it a little bit more and asking the right questions. And I really wish that the public schools would spend more time focused on the mythological aspects or antiquity, because in the social studies classes I had as a kid, it was here's the pyramid and here's papyrus, and that's it. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, you don't talk about how they lived every single day.
Right.
And
You don't talk about any of the gods or any of the beliefs or any of the, the things we see today.
And that's what we do, I think.
Except
that's really what we're
don't
trying
let your
to do.
kids listen to us, because we say a lot.
Right.
Can we curse on here, by the way?
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
That's totally cool.
Because we say fuck a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might can I shoot 20 of them out because I've been holding them in.
Right, for sure.
Oh, yeah. In the last podcast, it was dick joke after dick joke after dick. And it's kind of funny for us because we will bring on, scholars, Price and Ehrman and Fitzgerald, and all the, and those are very proper intellectual podcast interviews. And yeah, the last 4, we've just been swearing nonstop. And
and it's coincidentally, most of them have been with other podcasters.
yeah, that's right. That's right. The other podcasters, but that sells,
Like a sickness.
Yeah,
like
I
a
think people like that. You can listen to a podcast and get the unedited, the raw material versus like a NPR radio station.
Right.
You can't get that stuff. So you guys are looking at keeping the show going. Do you have any other projects going right now?
You heard the number of hours we work a week. This podcast is just so much work. I mean, especially the way that we do it, I think is just so crazy time intensive. Each week we have to basically at least sound like experts on something that we're talking about.
Yeah.
We have to pretend enough that people believe it, so that if Tim has 3 questions deep, I might run out of knowledge about it, but I need to at least make it to 2 questions deep. He says, what about this? And then a question on top of that. I feel like I'm obliged to know that much about it. Consequently, I forget a lot of it because it's just cramming for a test, really.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how many hours of research do you put into a show, Tim?
I'd say low end would be 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, probably low end,
Wow.
I mean,
but this,
my Scientology suite, I'm well over 60 hours.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
sure.
What are you guys doing on Scientology?
I've done from Origins up until right now, until the great leader took over.
Wow, interesting. We do it the easy way, and we just get Tony Ortega to get on the show.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Have Tony. We're looking at having Jamie DeWolf come back on. He's the great grandson of L. Ron Hubbard. So,
Oh, wow.
and he speaks against the church, and he has a lot of interesting little
Yeah.
tidbits, like how his family was like the Scientologists early on when his grandfather was outed by L. Ron Hubbard. His family was like, getting the pictures, like, we know where your kids play, and just these threats, and it's just a crazy story. I mean, like just looking at that whole thing.
Everything about Scientology is an absolute crazy story, and it, like when I knew that I was going to do it, I knew that it was going to be like it was going to have to be a crazy deep dive.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think we've done 4 episodes or 5.
Well, yeah.
4. I've easily got 15 to 20 hours in each of those episodes.
Wow.
And I just tried to go as deep as possible, get as much background information as I could possibly have on it, and just present in a linear story and an entertaining story the best possible narrative that I can kind of give people for it. But I mean, like this past episode, we did we did a random, random religious rites, which is basically I just pick a week in the month, and I go around and I research all the weird religious rites that are going on at that time. So like that took me 3, 4, 5 hours.
That's
tops
awesome.
to kind of put,
But that's an
to kind of
awesome
put together.
topic, yeah.
Yeah,
They're always fun.
it's fun. It ended with one where someone peed on a sacred banya tree and they floated to the moon. So that happened.
Wow.
So yes, all of that research and then writing and then the recording is the shortest part, and then we have 3-4 hours sometimes of editing to do on top of that. Doesn't leave much time for other projects. Long story short,
but,
no.
Yeah, but I mean, as much as we talk about the amount of work and stuff it takes, I love it.
Oh,
I mean,
geez.
and Matt loves it. Like, we love hanging out with each other. We love bullshitting back and forth. We love arguing. And just the fact that, like, essentially now, like, I get to be paid for researching stuff that I find interesting.
Yeah.
It's amazeballs.
Well, and I give you guys a lot of credit for doing the research, because that's one of my biggest criticisms. Even in the atheist world, you get a lot of podcasts that talk about a subject that they don't even know what they're talking about, and then they're throwing misinformation out there, and it continues that trend of even more misinformation, because it does take a long time to research and come up with the actual statements and facts behind whatever the topic is. So I give you guys a lot of credit for doing that.
I think this would tie it back from me to one of your first questions of the early days of my being an atheist. The most unbearable thing in the world to me is to be wrong about something. Okay. So we certainly get things wrong on the show. I caught something from what?
War's divorce.
I know. Inside joke for the listeners. I caught something on short episode I did like 2 weeks ago that I didn't notice right away. So I'm going to have to write in a correction later on, and we get corrections from listeners, and we as soon as we get them, they go right in the show notes, because we cannot afford to be wrong.
Right.
And if we are, we have to be as open and transparent about it as possible, because that's our currency really is how correct we are,
for sure.
Agreed. And we do the same whenever anybody brings anything up on our Facebook. If it's something that Sean put up or I put up or somebody else put up, we'll look back and we'll see where was the text that you found this, and we'll do it like that, and we'll just quote the text from the author, from the scholar, to try to back us up. But thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been Matt and Tim from Atheism 101. You can hear their podcast, unless there's another website, at atheism101podcast.com. Their last episode that I see here, episode 160, is Random Religious Rites 2.
Yeah. And support their Patreon and get on there and help them keep doing the research, because it takes a long time. And when you have two guys with families and, work and everything else that happens, just putting in that time is sometimes very, very hard to do. So,
and we're glad to know that you're not lonely anymore, Matt.
And before we go, you guys mentioned you're moving to the north. Is it okay if you mention where you guys are moving to?
Oh yeah, well, I actually don't know what town we're going to settle in yet, but it'll be somewhere in central Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
Thank
live
you
outside
so much.
of New York City, so we'll be relatively close. Not randomly close. Not randomly close. Relatively.
And the beer's kicked in. Good night, everybody.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Join us next week. We're going to have major entertainer Mike H. He joined us on the Eric Andre show tour. He works with Tim and Eric. For those out there that like Tim and Eric, check that out. It's going to be a funny show, I think, and it'll be good. Thanks for joining us.
The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and to keep it secular.
Okay, got it.